Hey everybody, David Fine here from Watch Your Lip. This is our How to Fish Chokoloskee series, and we've done 2 videos so far. Number 1 was 7 tips on how to catch fish in Chokoloskee. The second video we did was what not to do when fishing in Chokoloskee. 7 tips on kind of negative things. Don't do this. But this video is going to be a little different. If you plan on camping in Chokoloskee, which is a really cool thing to do, we've had a great time doing this. And this is our 3rd year in a row going on these overnight camping fishing trips in Chokoloskee. Guys, we are having a blast, and it's gonna be a yearly tradition for us. And now that we have some experience, we're actually starting to grow in our knowledge and understanding. We're having fewer and fewer problems. Year 1 was a disaster. I can tell you right now. When we went out, we thought we did our research. We watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos. We talked to a bunch of people, and we had a really, really difficult time. Not only did we not catch that many fish, but we got stranded. We broke a whole bunch of laws that we didn't know we were breaking. There are laws on camping out especially in the national wildlife refuges. But the biggest one was we got stranded. We had all of our boats. We woke up in the morning to go fishing, and all of our boats were dry because we didn't realize that the tide was going out and that it goes out really, really far in certain areas, and our boats were dry, and that's a whole nother ball game. For some entertainment, if you want to look at that video, check out our Stranded in Chokoloskee series, video number 1. That was special. But guys, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give you 5 tips on camping in the Chokoloskee 10,000 island area. It's actually a majestic and beautiful looking backdrop. This is natural Florida at its best. I absolutely love it, and we're gonna do this every year, and we are gonna enjoy ourselves, and I just wanna give you a few tips and things that we've learned for camping in Chokoloskee. When you're launching your boat and you're gonna drive all the way to the outer islands of Chokoloskee in the 10,000 islands. These outer islands have some beautiful white sand beaches, and they're phenomenal. I mean, it looks like paradise. When you roll up on this island, it's white sand beach, there's nobody around. Okay guys, point number 1, my first tip, and I can't stress this enough. When you're going camping in Chokoloskee, if you have a kayak, that's one thing, but if you have a boat and you pull up to your island and you go to camp, and you go to set up camp, and let's say you pitch a tent and you go to sleep, and your boat is anchored, you have to understand the tides, because being stranded on Chokoloskee on one of these islands because you didn't realize that when you pull up to the island and the tide is medium to high, and you set your anchor, the tide can go way, way out. I mean, some of these tidal changes can be very drastic, like 3 or 4 feet, maybe even more of a difference. And the first 2 years, the first year we all got stranded. It was terrible. Our boats were dry. It was bad. We learned a little bit. The next year, I think only one of our boats got stranded. This year, we were very, very on top of things, knowing our tides. The first year we found an island. It was a beautiful beach, but it was actually a mud flat, and we didn't know that. We pulled up at high tide, and it was 4 feet deep. We pull up to the island, and it seemed good, and we even gave ourselves 20, 30 feet of anchor line, thought we were fine, but we didn't realize that this was more of a tidal flat, and when that tide went out, it went out like 100 yards and left this huge exposed ground area, and all of our boats were sitting on the ground, and we had to wait until the tide came up. That was embarrassing. Don't do that. So what you want to do is you want to find an island that has somewhat of a shelf where the water dips down, and you can pull up to that little shelf, and even though the tide might come up and down, your boat never leaves the water. You want it to be floating the whole time. You don't want it to be, obviously you're going to prop your engine up so your engine doesn't get stuck in the mud, but you'd want to make sure your boat is always floating. You want to make sure you have an anchor that's anchored up onto the beach, and you want to have some kind of a power pole. I went and got one of these fiberglass anchor poles for my little skiff, and you just stick it into the mud and you tie it to a cleat, and it's got this, this little gap where it slides up and down as the tide goes. And it's really a very nifty device. You're going to want to have a plan for anchoring your boat so that it doesn't move with the tide. It helps to find a spot where there's not strong current coming in and out. If you can find a current break with that dip where you can put your boat in an area like that, that's a must, because being stranded really sucks. Okay, so do some research. Don't be so quick to just pick any beach. All right, make sure you pick one where you're not going to get stranded. All right, guys, tip number 2 for camping in Chokoloskee. Do your research and know the laws and regulations for camping, because a lot of this 10,000 island area is within the national park system. And when you're camping in the national park, there are places where that are off limits. It's actually illegal to camp on certain islands. And there are certain designated areas for camping. So you got to know, especially if you're going to be within the national park boundaries, you got to know which islands that you're allowed to camp in, which ones you're not allowed to camp in. Then the ones that you are allowed to camp in, you have to get a camping pass or a permit. And so it's not that expensive. It's, I don't know what it is, 10, 20 bucks. And so you get your camping permit so you can go out and camp there. And if you're in the National Wildlife Refuges, you can't do campfires, no generators. You got to be careful. There's a lot of laws that you can break, and you got to make sure that you don't break any laws. The first year, I think we broke like 7 laws. I don't know. It was bad, and we got citation. We're sitting there stranded on the island because our boats are dry, and the FWC guy comes up and he goes, "Who's in charge here?" Right? So it was kind of one of those, let's learn a few things on this one. Make sure you know your laws, and that's kind of a good common sense thing wherever you are, not just in Chokoloskee, but it's a good one to know. All right, guys, tip number 3 for camping in Chokoloskee. I strongly recommend going with multiple boats, okay? If you're a Lone Ranger and you like to go by yourself, then God bless you. That's especially if you have experience, that's fine. But for newbies, we're exiting that newbie stage for camping out there because we've done it a number of times now. We have a little bit more experience. I can tell you right now, there's a great deal of comfort that I feel when we go out with multiple boats. Now we're going out with usually 4 or 5 boats, which is really cool. And we're going out with a dozen or 14 guys. This past time we had 14 guys with us, and we're all going together. A couple of us had a little bit of, some stranded issues, and we're able to help each other out. We're communicating using our VHF radios. Cell phone signal is spotty out there. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. It's actually getting better, but you can't rely on your cell phones out there. So make sure you have a good VHF radio. Make sure you're going out with people in case something happens. You have somebody to call, so you have help. So it's a good one. All right, guys, point number 4, camping in Chokoloskee. There are raccoons all over the islands. And so that's kind of anywhere you camp in South Florida. There's a lot of raccoons. So you definitely don't want to leave any coolers or food items or trash bags outside of your tent. You got to make sure that they're contained and locked, because raccoons are going to tear up your trash bags. They're going to get in your coolers. They're actually relentless. My buddy Aaron was sitting there at a chair at the campfire, and a raccoon came right up and sat right next to him, sat in the sand right next to him. He looked at him. The raccoon looks back up at him, and he's like, "What? Are you guys going to go to bed anytime soon?" They're not afraid of people. I mean, they're just sitting there waiting for you to go to bed, and they're going to ravish your campsite as soon as there's no human activity. And actually, sometimes when there is human activity, they're still poking around and getting in stuff. And along with that, if you have live bait, if you have live fish, you have live shrimp, you have live crabs, any live bait, and you put them in a live bait bucket, guys, the raccoons know what those bait buckets are. They know that fishermen come with these, it's like Red Lobster on a boat, and they serve shrimp cocktail to the raccoons. They go in. My buddy George had a floating Flow-Troll bait bucket attached to the cleat on his boat. And I got up in the middle of the night to go check the boats to make sure that they were situated. And there was a raccoon in 2 feet of water, and he had his hand on the rim of the Flow-Troll bucket, and the other hand was reaching in, and he was pulling out shrimp, and he was eating them. And then he looked up at me as I shined the light on him. He's like, "What? You gonna leave me alone?" And so, George fed the raccoons and was very upset because all of his expensive shrimp got eaten. So, and it wasn't by fish, it was by the raccoon. So be careful of raccoons. They're going to eat your bait. So just have that in mind if you're camping in Chokoloskee. All right, guys, finally, number 5, if you're gonna go camping in Chokoloskee, you might already know this, but I can tell you right now, you expect the worst when it comes to insects. And I'm talking NOSEUMS and mosquitoes. We tend to go, the more popular months to camp there are in the winter months when it's cooler. NOSEUMS are, they're always around, but they're worse in the later in the spring when it starts to rain a lot, and that they start to populate more. And same thing with mosquitoes. Mosquito populations come and go with rain. In the winter, the mosquitoes aren't that bad. It's really not. We go in the spring. We tend to go in March, and it's typically pretty breezy in March. You don't have a whole lot of days where it's dead calm wind, and so that breeze helps keep the mosquitoes and the NOSEUMS away. But this last time, we had a little thunderstorm come through in the middle of the night, and as soon as that thing passed, the wind died and the NOSEUMS were ravenous. So make sure, guys, that you have a head net. That helps tremendously, even when you're sleeping. Sleep with a hat on and you have a head net. It helps cover your face so that mosquitoes aren't biting your face. I would wear long sleeves. I would wear long pants. Any skin that's not covered, including the back of your hands, NOSEUMS are going to eat you alive. My son got eaten alive. Make sure you bring in bug spray and spray it all over your clothes. I mean, this past time, the NOSEUMS actually started to crawl inside of your sleeves and crawl up and start to bite the upper arms. And it was very annoying because, you wear long sleeves so the bugs don't bite, but then they start crawling up in there, and, it's maddening. And I think worse than the actual bites is psychologically when you're out there. If it starts to get bad and you're not prepared, you don't have your head net, you don't have your long sleeves or your insect repellent, it starts to get to your mind and you really start to hate your life. So I can't stress that more than to be prepared for a lot of bugs. Man, that's probably my biggest advice. Just be ready for bugs. And if you go in the summer months, we're not brave enough to do that. I gotta be honest. We're not brave enough to go camping in Chokoloskee in the summer months. I'm starting to itch just thinking about it. But guys, if you do, God bless you and stay safe. Maybe bring some extra pints of blood if you go out there in July and August. You might have a lot of snook out there at that time, but you're gonna have salt marsh mosquito nightmares for years to come. So guys, thumbs up on the video, please. That would help. Don't forget to subscribe. And we've got a lot of fishing action both on the west and east coast of Florida. We've figured out the southeast coast pretty well. Inshore, offshore, we're from snakeheads to swordfish, and we're having a lot of fun down here. So if you'd subscribe to our channel, that'd be great. So if you learned something, drop a comment. If you have any other suggestions on how to camp, or if you have any questions on other videos you'd like for us to make, drop a comment. We'd love to respond to those and make a video on your suggestions. So guys, thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. Stay safe. Have fun in Chokoloskee. It's a blast. Bye now. Watch your lip.